There is a separation of the body and the mind as death gets closer. The mind and the body will separate further. The mind disassociates as the body begins to shut down slowly. I'm sorry he can't come to the door right now. He doesn't want to see anyone. It's a separation in which the mind disassociates with the body. I'm afraid he's just not free to take visitors. Well, she just disappeared. That's all we know. Bodies, brains. We all have them. They're all different, but we own them, right? What happens when our bodies and our brains become compromised? What if our bodies are no longer ours? What can we control and what can't we control? What if someone else owned a part of you, or someone else controlled your mind? Ask yourself this: who does your body and brain belong to? Welcome to Extraordinary Stories Podcast. Hey, how are you? Are you well? Are you good? I am. Okay, so much chatter on the last story. Brilliant, great to hear your thoughts on it. The amnesia story. Was he a faker? Was he a 1 in a million? Well, up to you to decide. Okay, this is the last episode in the Bodies and Brains series, and I have two just quite short little stories for you to end this. But first of all, what I'm going to do is just two shout outs that I really want to do in this episode. Okay, the first shout out goes to Donna Tulloch. Donna, you're having a tough time at the moment. You got in touch to say you need a bit of sunshine in your life. So, hello, Donna. I hope you're okay. I hope your family are okay. And I just hope everything is all right with you in your life, Donna. And the second shout out, this goes to Jessica Gladowski, and I do hope I've said that correctly. Hello, Jessica. Zach says hi. He says he's looking forward to seeing you soon, and he can't wait to talk about the episode. So Jessica, Zach is thinking of you, and I know you've moved recently from Wisconsin to Arizona. So, hello, Jessica, and thanks, Zach, for your message. Okay, so like I said, this is the final episode, and I'll tell you, this is kind of where my thinking's at, right? This is where I've got to. I've been asking in that beginning section about control, and these two stories, I think, are really good examples of control of bodies. Who has it? And in these stories, what choices were made and who made them? Are you ready? Okay, let's go. Okay, these days we can be who we want to be, right? We can live how we want, We can have sex with who we want. We can be in a relationship. We can not be in a relationship. Get married. Don't get married. Up to you. But values weren't always the same. And in 1968, values might have been slightly different for one Audrey Mountford. Now, Audrey. Audrey was an Australian from Sydney, and she was born in 1920. Born into a wealthy family, and Audrey spent her time mainly working as an artist. Specifically, she liked to paint. Now, she was good. She was a good artist and she was well respected for it, but she didn't necessarily make a lot of money from it. She made some money, but not a great deal. So, to top up the little amount that she would make, her other way of earning money was to do some modelling. She would sit for other painters for a small fee, and she did that for photographers. And so that was how Audrey kind of got by. Now, around about her in her life, she had a brother and two sisters. And as they had all grown up and become adults, Audrey's siblings had all gotten married and had left the family home to have their own children and live their own lives. Now, Audrey had left the family home, yes, as an adult, but she'd never been in a serious relationship. Why? Well, who knows? I mean, maybe it was Audrey's choice. Maybe Audrey was one of those people not trapped by the idea that a woman had to marry lest she became a spinster. Or was she trapped by these ideas? Well, I think Audrey's story might give us the answer. All around her, Audrey's friends were married, and perhaps she was beginning to feel the pressure of the times. You know, she was in her mid-30s and she was alone. Now, I have to read you this. This was from the Australian government at the time. This was in 1968. Now, you know, I love you, Australians. And we all know my feelings on a certain Miss Minogue. But this statement, I was so shocked and appalled. Anyway, this is what the Australian government had to say in 1968. A woman cannot stay young and attractive forever. And later on, she could well become a problem. She could become a spinster. A spinster lady can, and very often does, turn into something of a battle axe with the passing years. A man usually mellows. Fuck off. That's me saying that, not the Australian government. Oh. So as the man who writes this continues, he discusses his own family, and he says, I've already begun to regretfully decline my daughter's requests for education and social opportunities, explaining to her that she could not be regarded as a long-term investment in the same sense that we regard her brother, for example. She must fix her eyes on the goal of marriage. I mean, what now? So, what do words and ideals like that mean for Audrey when, at the time when this was published, she was unmarried? Well, here's the thing. Audrey was independent. She was her own person. And her family, they use words like flighty and breezy to describe Audrey. Flighty and breezy. Is Audrey a bird? Anyway, that's how they describe her. And they'll say things like that about her because what she liked to do was travel alone. She liked to just go overseas, visit different countries, meet different people. She wasn't afraid to just get out there and be her own person. And so maybe that's where words like flighty and breezy and things like that come from. Anyway, good on her. I think great for Audrey that she was just like, I'll just go out and do my own thing. I don't need to be tied down, or, she was independent. So it's on one of her flighty, breezy trips that she meets a man and she begins a romance. Now, it's not the first time Audrey is going to start a romance. It's really not. She's had a few over the years. It's not to say that she's never had a boyfriend. She has. It's just that they've never really gone much further than maybe a couple of months here and there. That's fine. But this one's a little bit different. This becomes quite full on. And before long, Audrey and her gentleman friend, love the term gentleman friend, well, they get engaged. Now at this point, Audrey is 49 years old, and the man that she's engaged to is in his late 30s. He is a Canadian, and he is in the army. Now there's one thing that's very important to this man, and that is his Catholicism. He is very, very, very clear that the woman he marries must be Catholic. And so Audrey, she tells her family she's going to convert to Catholicism for him. Audrey's family, they're fine with that. They're like, look, if that's the choice you've made, and if this is going to make you happy and you're going to get married, great, excellent, on you go. So she does it. She converts to Catholicism. The big wedding day is looming. The wedding's going to be in Australia, where Audrey's family are. And then disaster strikes. Audrey's fiancé calls the wedding off. Why? No one knows. No idea why he calls the wedding off. He tells Audrey that their relationship is finished, and that's it. Her hopes of being married are dashed. What a scoundrel. Or maybe an Australian word to describe him would be better than scoundrel. What a yobble. I'm not even sure that's right. I don't really know what a yobble is. I did look up some Australian terms, but I don't think any of them are quite right. Let's see, we've got root rat. Is that right, Australians? I don't think it is. A belly lid. What the hell's a belly lid? Never heard of that in my life. I think this one might be right. A wombat. It says next to wombat on the internet, it's a term to describe a selfish male. Let's call him a wombat. Right, so the Canadian wombat, he's away. He's cancelled. And what does that mean for Audrey and her life? Well, it means this. She vanishes. Into thin air, she disappears. Without taking very many belongings, she is gone. And here's what's weird. Audrey's gone, and her family don't report it to police. I mean, this is 1968. An adult woman living in Sydney just disappears. And this is all that our family have to say. She's just the type to disappear. It doesn't surprise us. She'll be off on another adventure, no doubt. The last person to see her was her cousin Nola, who the day before Audrey vanished, returned some clothes that she had borrowed. And as far as the cousin was concerned, and perhaps the family were concerned, Audrey sort of falling out of contact was probably her away licking her wounds somewhere from the engagement gone wrong, or maybe she was off in search of a new man in her life. That's a real lack of concern. And what happens is time passes. A lot of time passes. And there is no word, not a sausage from Audrey to say where she is or what she's up to. It's just accepted. She's gone. Now that was 1969. Let's move forward to 1981. 12 years later, there is a man hiking in the Blue Mountains part of Australia. So, the Blue Mountains would be about 2 hours away from Sydney. And here he is, he's out and about hiking, he's on his own, and he's moving in and out of some nooks and some crannies on the Blue Mountains, and he finds a series of caves, and he decides he's going to go exploring. Now, one of the caves that he is walking towards, it's not particularly hidden or buried away from general view. This cave contains something this man will never forget seeing. As he approaches and he looks inside, he sees a pile of bones lying on the floor of the cave. Nearby he sees a small table, a notebook, some letters, some artist's pastels for drawing, a handbag, and a vinyl record. The record is The Last Waltz. He looks closer at the bones and the now destroyed clothing, and he sees that on the left hand there is a wedding ring. So he does what I'm sure we would all do. He leaves the cave immediately, calls for help, and lets people know what he's found. Oh my God, I would be so freaked out, wouldn't you? You'd be like really freaked out by that. See, this is terrible, right? I think I'd be freaked out, but I'd also be really interested in what that vinyl was. Just because I'm a music lover, I'd be like, I wonder what that vinyl was that these bones are holding on to. Like I said, it was The Last Waltz by, I can never say his name, Engelbach Humperdinck, whatever he's called. Yeah, that guy. And so what happens is police arrive, and of course they want to go through the items, and they do, and they want to look at the bones, but there's nothing that actually tells them who this person is. There's nothing in the belongings that actually tell them this is so-and-so. They can't really work out who is this pile of bones in the cave. Well, I think we know, listeners. I think we might be able to work out whose bones these are. But police didn't. So what happens is they report the story in the news. And although people raise eyebrows and they say, Struth, that's fair dinkum, nobody comes forward to say, is that my missing relative? Or I've been searching for someone. Nobody. It's like, it's so weird. It just gets reported and people go, that's strange. Pile of bones found in a cave. Anyway, I'll just carry on with what I was doing. So, this just goes into police cold files, not to be looked at again. Until 2009, 28 years after the bones had been discovered. Now, I'm sure we've all learned how cold cases work. You know, things come in, if they're not solved within a certain amount of time, they get put in the cold case files, at which point the cold case files, I think, get churned around every few years, so things will resurface and come to the top again, and here is the pile of bones that was never quite solved. So this time, in 2009, when police put out another appeal or tried to find some information, finally some of Audrey's family actually pay attention. And what they do is they come forward and they say, now, could this possibly be her? It's not too far from where we lived, and she did just vanish after all. So maybe this could be Audrey. They go through the belongings that they found near the bones, and they look at the vinyl record by Nickelback, Hump and Dunk. And well, it doesn't really tell them anything because, well, that was a big record at the time, so that could be anyone. Then there's the sort of artist's equipment. That could definitely be a clue. But this is what really seals the deal. It's the ring. The ring that the hiker who found the body saw. The ring did indeed belong to the Mountford family. It was Audrey's mother's wedding ring, which she had given to Audrey before she died, and Audrey had always kept as an adult. And so by being able to identify the wedding ring and the other bits and pieces, her family finally realised Audrey had died in a cave a couple of hours from their home. Audrey's death was the result of exposure to the elements. Now, it's hard to say, after so many years, exactly what that exposure was, but cold temperatures, being subject to all weather elements, essentially cutting herself off from food and water would all have added up to Audrey's death in that cave. Now, here's why I wanted to look at this for bodies and brains. I am fascinated by the fact that a woman of Audrey's capabilities and freedom and spirit would take herself off into a cave where she must have known she would die a slow death. It's a strange form of suicide. It's essentially handing your body over to the elements. And what does death by exposure mean, or what does it actually look like? Well, a doctor in 1991 writes so beautifully about it, about what is a really, really horrible process. He says, there is a separation of the body and the mind during death by exposure. And as death gets closer, the mind and the body separate. There's dissociation as the body begins to slowly shut down. Here's my questions. Did Audrey intend to come out of that cave? We'll never know. Did she actually intend this to be her death? Well, we don't know that, except that we do know she made the choice to go there and to be very careful about what she took. And if you look at the things that she took, they weren't survival materials. You know, she didn't take an array of clothing to protect her. She didn't take a stash of food and water. She took a vinyl, a wedding ring, and some painting materials. Was she so heartbroken from the engagement ending that this was how Audrey decided it was going to end? The cousin, the last person ever to see Audrey alive, when all of this was discovered, said this: I know that being left by a man would have affected her very badly. She was a dreamer and a bit unrealistic. So for her to go and live in a cave is something I think would have suited her personality. She was the type to think with her heart, not her brain. So after 41 years of being in an unknown place, Audrey's bones were laid to rest in a small funeral in Sydney. Her cousin's final words on the day of the funeral are as follows. It saddens me more to find out what happened to her, rather than believing that she had run away and was living her life. I've always assumed she just didn't want to get in touch. I know there were men, and I know she was jilted, but something deep must have really hurt her to decide to die in that cave. And so ends the story. Okay, the second little story. Now, it's really strange how these things happen. I've had this little weird story tucked away for ages, and I've been thinking, I'm not sure how I'm ever going to get this story told because it's small and it's weird. But turns out it's perfect for this. Okay, let's go to Japan. In 2010, the Japanese government are looking through their files and they come across a name. And they have this name in a special file and they pull it out for further examination. Now, the name on the file is Sogen Kato, a Japanese man, but not just any man. One of the oldest men in the whole of Japan. Born, get this, 1899. When the government are looking at this file, Sogen Kato will be the ripe old age of 111. Amazing. Imagine actually being 111. Brilliant. I mean, yeah. I wonder what they do. I wonder what the celebration is, because that's why they're wanting to look at it, is because they want to do some kind of a thing. But I can't actually find out what in Japan they do to sort of celebrate someone reaching a massive age like that. In the UK, it's a card from the Queen. I can't wait for it. I mean, when you turn 100, you get a card from the Queen. I mean, that is so exciting, isn't it? Yeah, she actually just writes a wee card that's like, happy birthday. Oh, hang on. Oh, I've just realised. Oh, what? I'm not going to get a card from the Queen. Oh, no. Right, if I'm 21 now, that's another 80 years away. The Queen's going to be well dead. Oh, that's bloody rubbish. Oh, I'll end up getting a card for Harry or... No, he's not Harry, who is he? William, or whatever he's called. In fact, 80 years' time, it's not even likely to be him. Oh, it's going to be some other... It's going to be some pure rubbish royal that I get it from. Oh, Princess Eugenia or something. Oh, that's rubbish. Anyway, right, so back to Kato. So Kato, the government want to do something really special to make, to make a big deal about the fact that he's the oldest man living in Japan. So this is step one of what they do. They make a call to Kato's house, and one of his relatives opens the door. And when they ask to speak to Kato, they're told he's visiting Gifu Prefecture, which is a Japanese city, and it's a good few miles away from here. So he's not home right now. Okay, they think. Fine, we'll come back later. And they do. They come back 2 weeks later. And this time, it's his daughter who answers the door. And when they ask to see Kato, she says, go away. He doesn't want to see anyone. 2 visits in a month, and they can't get hold of him. So what the government do is they go to police, and they ask if police could make a courtesy call to the house just to check if everything is okay. Police do this. The same daughter answers the door, and she refuses to let the police come in. She says, my father doesn't want to be disturbed. Police don't like this. That's twice now the government have tried. It's once the police have tried. It's not looking good. So they start going round the neighbourhood and they start asking questions. Has anyone seen him? When was the last time anyone's seen him? And as this is going on, like, they're causing a bit of a stir in the neighbourhood. People are starting to go, did you get a visit from the police? Yeah, I got a visit from the police. Well, I'm just imagining that's what they were saying, but it'll be something along those lines. Talking about, wonder why they're asking about that house. I wonder why they're asking about him. As this is happening, a young girl turns up at the Japanese police station with something to say. I said the Japanese police station as if there's only one. There's millions. She turns up at a Japanese police station. She informs police that she is the great-granddaughter of Sogen Kato and that she hasn't seen him in years, but that his bedroom is guarded by family members and that once, when she peeked inside, she thought she saw a skull. The granddaughter tells police, my grandfather shut himself in a room and we haven't seen him since. Now this is enough to make police think, okay, this is an emergency. We need to do something. And so they do. They break down the door to the Kato home. And when they do, family members scurry about inside trying to keep police out. It's not going to work. Police are there. They're going to get in that house. They're going to find what they're looking for. Family members are trying to keep them away from one particular bedroom. But police manage to get in, and this is what they find. Sogen Kato's mummified body is in bed. He's wearing pyjamas, and he's covered in a blanket. Beside him lies a pile of newspapers, and the top one is dated November 5th, 1978. Police interview the family to ask what the hell is going on here. And they discover that Kato has been dead for 32 years. That newspaper from 1978 was the last that he ever received. His family have kept his bedroom door closed to the outside world and not let anyone enter. So the family, this is mainly his daughter, try to explain that Kato wanted to enter into a state of, now forgive my pronunciation, Soko Yushin Butsu. I think that was pretty good. What is Soko Yushin Butsu? Well, it's mummification of the body, and it's when a person decides that they're going to give up all worldly pleasures and they're going to enter into a state where they're focused entirely on Buddhist teachings and nothing else. They say this is how he died, in bed, reading, and that his wishes were to be mummified and that they have observed them. Now this is obviously a very, very, very odd thing for police to find. So they have to take his body out of the house and, prepare for it to be buried somewhere. But now more questions begin for the family. How long did they intend to keep this going? Were they just going to have Kato's body in that bedroom, in that bed, and almost like pass it down through the generations? Is that what they were going to do? Were they just going to keep it there forever? Why had no one reported his death? I know they're saying he wanted to enter this mummification state, but 32 years. But also more importantly, police are concerned about this. For those 32 years, the family have been cashing his pension checks. And they've taken from the government almost £60,000 or 6 million yen in payments from the government. They tried to say, look, we were simply following his wishes. This is what he wanted. A judge, however, sees it differently. And 2 of Kato's family members are put in prison for fraud. Eventually, Kato's body is buried in a cemetery near his home. Now, when this story breaks into the news, it causes utter chaos. I mean, you can imagine, okay? So they thought they had a man who was 111 years old. They were going to do some massive celebration for him, only to discover he'd actually died 32 years ago. But where the real chaos came from is that they realised that they have all these statistics in Japan about people living to 103 years old and 97, and this real, like, we've got so many people in this country who live to these great ages, who, break through the 100-year barrier and whatever. And when they start to look into it, they realise plenty of those people have actually been dead for a long time, and their families have continued to claim the money. Mental stories start coming out from people who go, yeah, I haven't seen my grandmother in 22 years, but she was never buried. I don't know what the family have done with her body. I mean, it's insane. It's absolutely nuts. To this day, the family will say the money was never the focus. It was instead the wish of Kato that he be mummified in his own bed, and that one day people associate his name with being the oldest man in Japan. And so ends that weird little story. And so ends the Bodies and Brains series. Okay, right, well, I hope you enjoyed that little series. I mean, we've talked everything. We've had legs being passed through take-out windows. We've had brain scans in murder trials. We've had amnesia. We've had corpses being moved 100 times. And now we've had dying in caves and mummification. So, that's it. I'm out here. You know what to do. You can join the Facebook group. You can find me on all the social media platforms. Come, say hello, get in touch. Be lovely to hear from you. And until the next episode, go well, stay safe, sending you my love. Okay, goodbye.
It didn't affect me really one way or the other. I would imagine from the look on his face, let's get it on, let's do it, let's get it over. Let's get it on, let's do it, let's get it over.